Hi, and welcome back to the Conservation Essentials Step 4 of the Conservation Standards course. Again, this course focuses on the Analyze and Adapt step of the Conservation Standards and will provide you with vital skills for using monitoring data and new information to adapt as needed and improve your conservation efforts. In Module 5, we'll learn about how to make and document decisions while engaging stakeholders. You'll learn how to adapt as necessary your strategic plan based on the results of your reflection on progress toward implementation and outcome achievement. You'll learn how to summarize the changes to your proposed plan, get input from stakeholders or partners that were not involved in the analysis and reflection process, and document and prepare to share those changes beyond your core project team. Here are our learning objectives for this module. Analyze results as a team, document if and how your conservation project will adapt, and share and gather input from partners on the proposed adjustments. We're still working on the Conservation Standards Step 4 portion of the cycle. As you recall from previous modules, in the Analyze and Adapt step, we prepare data, analyze results, and adapt our plans accordingly. This module focuses on the final bullet point in this step, how to adapt our plans. During this module, we'll discuss how to make and document your adaptive management decisions based on the previous 3 modules, including when to engage partners and stakeholders to receive their inputs and sign off on changes based on your reflect and adapt process. We'll talk about documenting your detailed adaptive management decisions based on the narratives and justification you wrote out for Module 4. This includes specific changes to actions you might take. Finally, we'll work on documenting your overall adaptive management decisions, which might include adjustments to your strategies and using details to justify your changes, creation of new strategies, changes to the scope of your project, shifts in project partners, etc. You'll use your situation model, stoplight diagrams, action and indicator charts, and the narratives you created on these tools in Module 4 to justify any major changes. The conservation standards are intended to facilitate collaboration across project partners and stakeholders. Project partners are the teams or organizations on the work plan, such as implementing partners or subgrantees. The stakeholders are not on the work plan, but are beneficiaries of the project or individuals that are impacted in some way by the work that's being done. It's important to consult with project partners and stakeholders throughout the reflect and adapt process. This input may come during the project while you are collecting monitoring data, while recording the data as outlined in Module 2, and/or while data is being cleaned, as seen in Modules 3 and 4. These options may be less useful for a large project with many actors. In some cases, it may be most efficient for a core team of implementers to complete the data collection and cleaning, assuming that stakeholders and partners had a hand in designing the systems, and then pull in the broader audiences of stakeholders once the data is ready for decision making. This would be some form of group-based reflect and adapt activity, like an annual workshop or a quarterly learning review with relevant partners and stakeholders. As your broader team becomes more familiar with reflect and adapt tools and processes, you may choose to do most of the reflect and adapt work internally, then share the results with the stakeholders and partners to give them an opportunity to review and validate the work. This allows them the space to provide any final input on any updates to formal plans before those changes are made. The way you choose to engage your stakeholders and partners will be specific to your project program and context. It will likely change over time as participants become more familiar with the purpose and outputs of the process. Here are some considerations for when and how to engage the right people at the right time. You may choose to involve different groups of stakeholders at different stages of the reflect and adapt process. Different languages and locations may make it difficult to include all groups in one workshop or to use one tool or document across all participants. So ensure that your reflect and adapt process includes a plan for engaging key stakeholders and partners equitably. This could mean providing translation as needed or setting up a worksheet for one group of participants to fill out on their own, while also setting up an in-person listening session for a different set of participants. However you choose to engage stakeholders and partners, it's important that, at a minimum, they have final input and sign off on any formal changes to the work that you're doing together. For the purpose of this presentation, we're gathering stakeholder and partner input after we've done the primary data analysis, what you did in Module 4. We'll take a look at how you might engage stakeholders throughout the rest of the presentation. The women pictured here are beneficiaries of a conservation enterprise that makes and sells clay products on an island in Indonesia. The team implementing this project included a visit to their site during a reflect and adapt process. They shared their experiences, and the organization implementing the project was able to incorporate the findings of the site visit into their planning for the next year of implementation. The broader Reflect and Adapt workshop was then held in both Bahasa and English so that all participants could be included in the conversations. This is one example of ensuring all parties are included in the conversation during your Reflect and Adapt process. You've entered all of your tracking information for your strategies. Now it's smart to take a step back and look at what decisions you can make with this tool. If you're early in a project, it's likely that you'll have a lot of planned or blue markers, signifying that you're moving towards this work, but you haven't yet achieved a point in implementation or expected results. Yellow and red are the color markers we'll want to inspect and use to make our adaptive management decisions. Across your strategies, are you seeing a lot of red tracking markers on the left-hand side of your diagram? That might mean that you're struggling with starting up implementation. Are you seeing a lot of red in the middle? This could mean that you've run into some basic problems with implementation and your team might choose to move forward as is, or your initial work did not appropriately set you up to achieve this portion of your strategy, and you should reconsider the theory behind the work that you're doing. Are most of your red and yellow markers on the right-hand side of your results chain? This might imply that you're having trouble achieving impact and may want to reconsider the strategy itself and see if it's best suited to reach these results. We'll talk more about this later. Now that we have some ideas on how to engage stakeholders, let's return to the task at hand, making a documenting decision. We're going to start with detailed decisions and work our way up to the major changes you might want to make for your project. Your homework for Module 4 was to use Marathi share figures to write a narrative that describes the effectiveness of your strategy over time. You can use your Marathi share file to facilitate the discussion with your team, or print the tables from your Marathi file to share with participants on whichever reflect and adapt process you choose. I'm going to illustrate one way you may choose to complete this process with the core team and any other stakeholders or partners that need to contribute to the adaptive management of your project. First, you can pull all of the data you have on the left from your Marathi file, either as an exported table or a formatted Excel or Google spreadsheet table of your choice. You can decide what you want to change about specific activities based on the detailed data you have on your project progress and implementation. Reviewing detailed data is important for your implementing team. What small steps do they need to take to make their strategy more effective? For the first example action shown here, the core team did not suggest changes as the action is complete. The second action is shown as on track, and the core team decided that the implementation team should start with a handful of restaurants that were surveyed during the scoping phase, as they are already familiar with the project. Finally, the monitoring action was marked with minor issues. They used the progress details to understand that this was due to an issue with the development of reliable data collection process. As a result, the core team suggested that they ask their research partner if they have a suggestion for improving their data collection process. This team has decided to engage their partners and stakeholders during this phase, and the research partner was immediately able to offer a suggestion to use a similar approach to another project that they're working on in another context. You could share this document around with each stakeholder group separately and allow them to add their recommendations for the next cycle of implementation. Or you could hold an in-person meeting or workshop where you gather these inputs from all stakeholders together in one place. You could do the same process virtually as well, using an online meeting platform like Zoom. In Module 4, you also tracked your results progress and progress percent updates for your objectives. Pull that data from your Marathi file either as an exported table or formatted Excel or Google spreadsheet of your choice. Go through the same process you did for your activities and decide what to change based on the detailed data you have on your percent progress. The team hasn't suggested changes for the first two objectives as they've achieved their objectives, but they have suggested sharing their learning around this work. Despite the project's success in reducing demand for shark fin soup in the capital city, the team is still seeing shark finning occurring in Eastern Bay. Why is that? What can the team do differently to understand this? The core team notes that new changing legislation may impact the way fishing is done in the area. This legislation may complement the work that Eastern Bay team is doing with the strategy. The research partner for the project also suggests more research on consumers of shark fins. They wonder if the team is missing an audience that gets their shark fin product outside of capital city restaurants. As with our actions, this tool allows you to get inputs from your stakeholders and partners. Again, you could be facilitating this in an in-person or virtual session. As your team gets more and more comfortable with reflect and adapt processes, you may be able to simply send this document around to get inputs, or you may choose to do a hybrid of the two, sending this around quarterly to your team, but gathering in person or virtually annually to validate formal changes for the following year of the project. You have also tracked your results along your results chain. You can see this in a table format as well, and justify any decisions you make based on your ratings. The ratings on your results are based on your objective and indicator information where possible, but not all results will have objectives or indicators. It can be helpful to highlight those results in a table like this as well, so that you can justify and track over time any suggested adjustments to your project's results. Now, this team has a good understanding of the details behind their strategy stoplight diagram. Implementation of the strategy is going well. The team will work with their research partner to improve their monitoring activities. The major issues they're running into are on the far right of the diagram, but there's not much they can do now. They've committed to learning more about other consumers of shark fins outside of Capital City Restaurant. They will remain aware of the changing legislation that may impact their ultimate outcomes. In Module 2, you updated your situation model. You'll want to use those updates to the context to guide your adaptive management decision making. For example, you may have new information about a threat, like dam construction and management, that changes the focus of your actions for the year. The unexpected construction of a dam in your project scope has major implications for all of your project work. As a result, your team may choose to add a new strategy dedicated to educating the dam operators on environmentally friendly dam construction and management processes. This may jump to a higher priority strategy. Here's another example. This team was uncertain if rats were the main cause of seabird nest predation in the area, but a recent study confirmed that rats are indeed the main cause of predation. As a result, your team may choose to reduce your project's investment in research around the topic and focus your efforts on addressing the rats. Remember your changelog from Module 2? You use this to keep track of changes to your situation model over time. This is also a helpful tool for you to note your adaptive management decisions. Here, we've logged the recommendations that we just identified in the previous two slides. This makes writing your narrative much easier. Understanding project impact will guide your overall adaptive management decisions, both for your strategies that are working towards your goals and for the combination of these strategies. You'll see that two strategies feed into this goal: the campaign to stop shark fin soup and strengthen law enforcement strategies. Your goal status can help you understand how your strategies are working together to reduce threats and conserve biodiversity or improve human well-being in the area. This percent progress update for the team's healthy shark population goal is only at 13%. The core team has noted that they're still in the early to mid stages of project implementation, but they'd like to see the numbers increasing more. They'll need to explore additional strategies that can help them achieve this goal. This team has looked at the action tracking, progress percent tracking, and stoplight diagram for their strategies. They've also looked back at major changes to their context, adjustments to uncertainties they once had, and progress tracking for their project impact or goals. Now they can look at their overall results chain, a results chain that combines all of their strategies to show how they work together to help them achieve conservation impact. You read a project or overall stoplight diagram the same way that you read your individual strategy diagrams. You want to focus on the areas where there's a lot of red or yellow to know what you might want to adjust for the next cycle of implementation. And you want to look at the green tracking markers for lessons you might take forward or innovations to share beyond your project. The red and yellow markers on the right-hand side of this project stoplight diagram may imply that they're having trouble achieving impact and may want to reconsider if the suite of strategies that they're implementing are the right combination of actions to achieve the final results, threat reduction results, and achieve conservation and human well-being. Are they missing key strategies that would help or enable other strategies to achieve their results? This team has already identified the need to track the National Shark Protection Policy, an external strategy that they hope will support their work. What else might they consider adjusting to improve the impact of their project? Your homework will be to look at this combination of diagrams and charts to propose this team's adaptive management decisions based on all of this data. You have a solid draft of the detailed changes you're going to make to your project now that you've engaged your partners and project stakeholders and your team has looked over the results. How will these changes affect each strategy in your project? And how will those changes impact your project overall? You can take the recommendations you've gathered from your team, partners, and stakeholders and work with strategy leads to make the basic decisions on what to keep, change, or what should stay the same for each strategy. A core team should also take time to reflect on what these changes could mean for your project overall. Have you decided to focus efforts on one particular strategy this year because you found conditions to be more favorable for that work? What does that mean for your budget and the money you have to invest in your other strategies? Do you need to reconsider your near-term and far-term priorities based on what you've learned? We're looking at an example from a reference for this module, the Painted Dog Conservation Strategic Plan Review. This document has several sections titled Recommendations for Adaptation that you could draw on as an example. Before we end this module, let's look at an example to illustrate why reflect and adapt exercises are so important. In one project in Nepal, the team originally set out to create a large water project covering over 100 watersheds in the country. During the project's first annual Reflect and Adapt workshop, they reviewed its strategies and determined that to implement the strategies sufficiently in each watershed, they would have to greatly reduce the number of watersheds they focused on. By the end of the workshop, the team had reduced their project scope from hundreds of watersheds to 8. During following annual Reflect and Adapt sessions, they chose to add 4 more watersheds as they were able to show progress was moving forward with the other sites. In the end, the project was able to show evidence of conservation and human well-being impacts that they likely would not have achieved if they had spread their resources across over 100 watersheds. This same project dealt with the elections and government restructuring during their project implementation. That impacted their policy work and also shifted the way they were able to engage with communities across their sites. Checking in during their Reflect and Adapt processes permitted the team to navigate these major shifts while still achieving conservation and human well-being results. So, to recap, in this module we've discussed how to make and document adaptive management decisions based on the previous 3 modules. We've discussed insights on when and how to engage stakeholders. We've learned how to adapt as necessary our strategic plan based on the results of our reflection on progress towards implementation and outcome achievement. We also learned how to summarize changes to our proposed plan, get input from stakeholders or partners that were not involved in the analysis and reflection process, and document and prepare to share those changes beyond your core project team. During Module 6, we'll talk about how to take all this information and share it in all of your team's learning. We'll continue talking about Step 4 and start discussing Step 5, which focuses on sharing with your organization and beyond.